The security guard's voice boomed across the parking lot, dripping with mockery. "Hey, buddy, you sure you're in the right place? Deliveries are out back. This isn't a soup kitchen," he sneered, gesturing toward the rear of the towering office building. The delivery driver, a tall man in his mid-30s, stood in silence, his hands gripping the brown paper bag tightly. His plain clothes were slightly wrinkled, and the baseball cap pulled low over his face gave him a casual, unassuming look. The security guard crossed his arms and leaned against the building's polished glass doors, blocking the man's entry. "You can't just waltz in here with that I own the world look," the guard continued, laughing under his breath. "Let me guess, Uber Eats? DoorDash? Or are you just lost?" The delivery driver raised his eyes, locking onto the guard's smug face. His calm demeanor was unwavering, but there was a flicker of something sharp beneath his gaze. Before he could respond, another voice interrupted. "Jerry, why are you being rude?" A young woman in a crisp suit scolded as she hurried down the hallway toward the commotion. Jerry, the guard, shot her an annoyed glance. "Relax, Susan. I'm just keeping the riffraff where they belong. You know how these delivery guys like to push their luck." Susan looked at the delivery driver, who hadn't said a word, and then back at Jerry, her face a mixture of embarrassment and disapproval. "I'll handle this," she said, her voice clipped. But before she could step forward, the delivery driver finally spoke, his voice calm but firm. "Is this how you treat everyone who walks through these doors?" The question hung in the air, and for a moment, Jerry's smirk faltered. The driver's voice carried a weight that didn't match his unassuming appearance. Susan looked as though she wanted to say something, but the driver's next words froze her in place. "I think I'll take this straight to the top," he said, holding the paper bag tighter. The guard laughed. "Oh, sure. The CEO is just dying to chat with a delivery guy. Go ahead, be my guest." He stepped aside dramatically, waving the man through with a sarcastic bow. The delivery driver gave a faint smile and walked through the doors, leaving Jerry's laughter echoing behind him. Who is this guy? Jerry wondered, watching him disappear into the elevator. The answer would come soon enough, but by then, it would be far too late to undo the damage. Earlier that morning, the delivery driver had been in a small coffee shop on the other side of town. The air smelled of freshly brewed coffee and pastries, and the soft hum of conversation filled the space. 2 medium lattes and a blueberry muffin, the barista called, sliding the items across the counter. The driver, whose name was Alex Carter, picked them up carefully. He thanked the barista with a warm smile before heading out the door. The day had started like any other for Alex. Despite his unpretentious appearance, he was anything but ordinary. As he walked down the bustling city streets, his mind wasn't on the coffee or the muffin. It was on the people he'd be meeting today, the employees of Carter Enterprises. Carter Enterprises was a multi-million-dollar company Alex had built from the ground up. It was a name synonymous with innovation, but Alex believed in staying connected to the people who made the company run. That's why, a few times a year, he dressed down, ditched his luxury cars, and blended into the crowd. He wanted to see how his employees, and the world, treated those they assumed were beneath them. As he approached the towering office building, Alex noticed the security guard at the entrance. The man stood tall, his chest puffed out as though he were guarding Fort Knox. Alex had met people like him before, quick to judge and slow to offer respect. "Here we go," Alex muttered under his breath as he approached the doors. The confrontation that followed wasn't surprising, but it still stung. Alex had spent years cultivating a company culture that valued kindness and empathy, yet here was one of his own employees, treating a stranger with blatant disrespect. As Alex stepped into the elevator, his thoughts swirled. He wasn't angry, at least, not yet. He wanted to understand why someone like Jerry felt the need to belittle others. But more than that, he wanted to see how the rest of his team would respond. The elevator doors opened to the executive floor, and Alex was greeted by the familiar sight of sleek desks, glass walls, and the hustle of employees preparing for the day. "Good morning, Mr. Carter," Susan said, her voice warm but tinged with nervousness. She had recognized him immediately, though she said nothing in front of Jerry. Alex smiled. "Good morning, Susan. Let's talk." He glanced at the brown paper bag in his hands, then back at her. "But first, I have a delivery to make. Downstairs, Jerry was still chuckling to himself, recounting the interaction to his fellow guard at the rear entrance. You should have seen him. Walked in like he owned the place. Bet he's just some broke guy trying to hustle a free meal, Jerry said, his voice full of disdain. His colleague, a quiet man named David, frowned. Maybe he's just doing his job. You don't know his story. Jerry shrugged. Doesn't matter. People like that need to stay in their lane. David shook his head but said nothing. He had a sinking feeling that Jerry's arrogance would come back to bite him. Upstairs, Alex sat in the CEO's office, watching as the department heads filed in for their morning meeting. They greeted him warmly, unaware of the events that had unfolded downstairs. As the meeting began, Alex set the paper bag on the table and leaned back in his chair. Before we start, he said, his voice calm but commanding, I need to share something that happened this morning. The room fell silent as Alex recounted his encounter with Jerry. He left out no detail, painting a vivid picture of the guard's mocking tone and dismissive attitude. I want to hear your thoughts, Alex said, looking around the table. The department heads exchanged uneasy glances, their expressions a mix of shock and shame. None of them knew what to say. But before anyone could respond, Alex's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and smiled faintly. Excuse me, he said, standing. I need to handle this personally. He picked up the paper bag and left the room, heading back toward the elevator. As he descended to the lobby, Alex's expression shifted. The warmth in his eyes was replaced by a steely determination. Jerry had no idea what was coming. Jerry leaned lazily against the glass door, scrolling through his phone. His smirk from earlier lingered on his face, and he occasionally chuckled to himself, thinking about the interaction. The delivery driver's quiet demeanor had only made Jerry's mocking feel more justified. If he had any backbone, he would have said something, Jerry thought. As the lobby elevator chimed, Jerry looked up briefly, expecting one of the office workers to step out. Instead, his grin faded when he saw the same delivery driver emerge, paper bag still in hand. But now, something about the man's posture seemed different. He wasn't just walking. He was commanding attention. What? You forgot something? Jerry scoffed, forcing himself to sound confident. But his voice wavered slightly, and he could feel the unease creep in. Alex stopped in front of Jerry, his calm eyes meeting the guards. You, Alex said evenly, his tone low but firm. Come with me. Jerry laughed nervously. What? I'm not going anywhere. I've got a job to do. You think you can tell me what to do just because you're delivering someone's coffee? Alex didn't flinch. Instead, he turned slightly, and Jerry noticed two figures approaching, Susan and David. Susan had a tight expression on her face, her lips pressed into a thin line, while David looked uncomfortable but resolute. Jerry, Susan said, her voice sharp. Go with him. Now. Jerry blinked, looking between the three of them. What's this about? He demanded, his bravado starting to crack. Is this some kind of prank? Susan crossed her arms. You'll find out soon enough. David stepped forward and put a hand on Jerry's shoulder, his grip firm. Let's not make this harder than it has to be. For a moment, Jerry considered refusing. But the look in Alex's eyes, the quiet authority that seemed out of place for a delivery driver, unnerved him. Reluctantly, he followed Alex, Susan, and David into the elevator. The ride up was tense and silent. Jerry's mind raced, trying to piece together what was happening. Was this guy someone important? A contractor? A client? No, that doesn't make sense. He didn't look like anyone special. But the way Susan and David deferred to him told a different story. When the elevator doors opened, Jerry stepped out into an unfamiliar floor. It wasn't one of the lobby-level meeting areas he was used to seeing. This was the executive floor, with its polished wood panels, sleek furniture, and floor-to-ceiling windows offering a breathtaking view of the city. Why are we here? Jerry asked, his voice quieter now. The arrogance he'd carried all morning was quickly fading. Alex didn't answer. He led the group down a long hallway, stopping in front of an office door. The plaque on the door read, Alex Carter, Theo. Jerry froze, his heart pounding in his chest. He stared at the plaque, the name sinking in. Carter, as in Carter Enterprises? His mouth went dry. Alex opened the door and stepped inside, gesturing for Jerry to follow. Susan and David stayed in the hallway, their expressions unreadable. Jerry hesitated, but Alex's calm, steady gaze left him no choice. He stepped into the office, and Alex closed the door behind them. Earlier that morning, Jerry had been in his usual routine. He'd arrived at work grumpy after a late night out, his patience thinner than usual. The morning shift was always slow, and he resented how much time he spent standing around waiting for anything, to happen. When Alex had approached the building, Jerry's mood had been sour, and his judgment had been quick. He saw a man in simple clothes, carrying a brown paper bag, and immediately decided he wasn't worth any respect. People like him shouldn't even be here, Jerry had muttered to himself after Alex walked away. He didn't think twice about the encounter, at least, not until now. Inside the office, Alex sat behind his massive desk, gesturing for Jerry to take the chair opposite him. Jerry hesitated, then slowly lowered himself into the seat, his body stiff with tension. "So," Alex began, his voice calm but with an unmistakable edge. "You seem to enjoy making assumptions about people." Jerry didn't respond. His eyes darted around the room, taking in the awards, photos, and framed newspaper articles that adorned the walls. Each one told a story of success and innovation, and all of them had one thing in common: Alex Carter. Alex leaned forward, his hands clasped on the desk. "Do you know why I didn't say anything earlier?" Jerry shook his head, his throat too dry to speak. "Because I wanted to see how far you'd take it," Alex said, his tone measured. "I wanted to see if anyone would step in, or if you'd realize on your own how wrong you were. But you didn't. You kept pushing." Jerry's face burned with shame, but Alex wasn't finished. "Here's the thing, Jerry. The way you treated me isn't just about me. It's about how you see people who you think are beneath you. And that's a problem." Jerry opened his mouth to respond, but Alex held up a hand. "I'm not asking for an excuse. I'm asking you to think about why you act the way you do. Because if this is how you treat people who don't fit your idea of important, then you're in the wrong job." The weight of Alex's words hung in the air, and Jerry felt his stomach drop. He realized now that his actions had consequences he hadn't even begun to understand. As the conversation continued, Alex's tone shifted. He wasn't just scolding Jerry. He was trying to teach him a lesson. He spoke about the importance of kindness, the value of empathy, and how treating people with respect could make all the difference, not just in their lives, but in one's own. Jerry listened, his arrogance stripped away, replaced by a sinking feeling of regret. He didn't know what would happen next, but one thing was clear. His life was about to change in ways he couldn't have imagined. Just as Alex leaned back in his chair, the door opened. Susan stepped in, her expression serious. She held a folder in her hand and handed it to Alex without a word. Alex glanced at the folder, then back at Jerry. "It seems there's more to this story," he said, his tone heavy with implication. Jerry's heart pounded as Alex opened the folder and began to read. The silence in the office was deafening as Alex flipped through the pages of the folder. Jerry's palms were clammy, and his heartbeat thundered in his ears. He couldn't see what was written in the file, but the way Alex's eyes scanned the contents made him feel as if every mistake he'd ever made was laid bare. After what felt like an eternity, Alex closed the folder and set it down on the desk. He folded his hands over it, his expression unreadable. "Jerry," Alex began, his voice calm but firm. "Do you know what this is?" Jerry swallowed hard. "No, sir," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "This," Alex said, tapping the folder lightly, "is your personnel file." Jerry's stomach sank. He had never thought much about his personnel record. As far as he knew, he'd always done his job well enough to stay out of trouble. But the seriousness in Alex's tone told him that whatever was in that folder wasn't good. "Do you know what your job description is?" Alex asked, his gaze piercing. Jerry hesitated. "To, provide security for the building and its occupants," he stammered. "That's part of it," Alex said. "But there's more to it than just standing at a door or checking IDs. Your job is to represent this company. Every person who walks through those doors sees you before they see anyone else. You're the first impression they get of Carter Enterprises." Jerry shifted uncomfortably in his chair. He had never thought of his role in that way before. Alex leaned forward, his tone softening slightly. Let me ask you this. Do you think the way you treated me earlier represents the values of this company? Jerry looked down at his hands, unable to meet Alex's eyes. No, sir, he mumbled. Exactly, Alex said, sitting back in his chair. And that's a problem. Earlier that morning, Susan had pulled Alex aside after the initial confrontation with Jerry. She had been visibly flustered, apologizing profusely for the guard's behavior. I'm so sorry, Mr. Carter, she had said. I'll handle this right away. But Alex had stopped her. No, Susan. Let him dig his own grave. I want to see how far this goes. Susan had been hesitant, but she trusted Alex's judgment. She had gone back to her desk and pulled Jerry's file, preparing for what she knew would be an uncomfortable conversation. She had read through the file, noting several prior complaints about Jerry's attitude toward visitors and lower-level employees. Nothing had been serious enough to warrant termination, but the pattern was undeniable. Now, as Alex stared at Jerry across the desk, Susan's earlier words echoed in his mind. He's gotten away with too much for too long. It's time he learns there are consequences. Alex tapped the folder again, breaking the tense silence. Your file tells me a lot about you, Jerry. It tells me that you've had several complaints filed against you for your behavior. It tells me that this isn't the first time you've treated someone poorly. And it tells me that you've been warned about this before. Jerry's face burned with shame. He had hoped those incidents were behind him, that they wouldn't come back to haunt him. But here they were, staring him in the face. I can explain, Jerry began, but Alex cut him off. I'm not interested in excuses, Alex said, his voice sharp. What I'm interested in is whether you're willing to take responsibility for your actions and make a change. Jerry looked up, his eyes wide with surprise. He had expected anger, maybe even immediate termination. But Alex's words carried a tone of hope that he could redeem himself if he was willing to put in the effort. I didn't realize how I was coming across, Jerry said, his voice shaky. I thought I was just doing my job, but I see now that I was wrong. I'm sorry. Alex studied him for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Apologies are a start, he said finally, but words mean nothing without action. If you're serious about making a change, you're going to have to prove it. Jerry nodded quickly. I will, sir. I promise. Alex leaned back in his chair, considering his next words carefully. Here's what we're going to do. You're not being fired today, but you are being put on probation. You'll attend mandatory training sessions on professional conduct and customer service. And if I hear about one more incident like this, you'll be out the door. Do you understand? Jerry swallowed hard. Yes, sir. Thank you for giving me another chance. Alex nodded, his expression softening slightly. Everyone deserves a chance to learn from their mistakes. But don't waste this opportunity, Jerry. Prove to me, and to yourself, that you can do better. As Jerry left the office, his mind was racing. He felt a mixture of relief, shame, and determination. He had been given a second chance, and he was determined not to blow it. But as he stepped into the hallway, he caught sight of Susan and David talking quietly nearby. They stopped when they saw him, their expressions neutral. Hey, Jerry said awkwardly, his voice subdued. Thanks for, not throwing me under the bus. Susan raised an eyebrow. Don't thank me. Thank Mr. Carter. He's the one who believes in second chances. David nodded. He didn't have to do that, you know? Most CEOs wouldn't have bothered. They would have fired you on the spot. Jerry nodded, the weight of their words sinking in. I get it, he said quietly. I've got a lot to think about. As he walked away, Susan and David exchanged a glance. Do you think he'll change? Susan asked. David shrugged. I hope so, but only time will tell. Back in his office, Alex sat at his desk, staring out the window. He had handled the situation, but he couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to be done. He wanted to ensure that everyone in his company understood the importance of empathy and respect, not just because it was good for business, but because it was the right thing to do. His phone buzzed, pulling him from his thoughts. It was a message from his assistant. Meeting with department heads in 10 minutes. Alex sighed and stood, straightening his jacket. He had a long day ahead of him, and this was only the beginning. But as he left his office, his mind lingered on Jerry. He couldn't help but wonder, had he done enough to make an impact? Or was it already too late? The elevator doors slid shut, carrying Alex back to the executive floor for his meeting. His expression was calm, but his thoughts churned. He had done his part with Jerry, but the nagging question of whether the guard would truly change lingered. Alex believed in giving people chances, but he also knew not everyone took them seriously. Time will tell, he thought. Meanwhile, Jerry remained in the lobby, his posture stiff, his mind replaying the conversation with Alex. He still couldn't wrap his head around the fact that the man he had mocked was not just anyone, but the CEO of the company he worked for. He felt a mix of embarrassment and fear. What if I mess up again? Will I lose my job next time? His thoughts were interrupted by David, who approached him with a clipboard. Jerry, David said quietly, you're being reassigned for the rest of the day. They want you at the loading dock. Jerry's face fell. The loading dock was the least desirable post. Cold, noisy, and far removed from the polished lobby where he had grown comfortable. He wanted to argue but stopped himself. This is part of the lesson, he realized. Got it, Jerry said, nodding. He took the clipboard and headed to the rear of the building, his steps heavier than usual. In the loading dock, the atmosphere was vastly different from the lobby. Delivery trucks rumbled in and out, workers shouted to be heard over the noise, and the air smelled faintly of exhaust fumes and cardboard. Jerry stood awkwardly by the entrance, unsure of what to do. A supervisor named Mike, a burly man with a no-nonsense demeanor, approached him. Jerry, right? Mike asked, his tone brisk. Yeah, Jerry replied, trying to match Mike's energy. Good. We need someone to manage the log sheets for incoming deliveries. It's not glamorous, but it's important. Got it? Jerry nodded. Got it. As Jerry settled into his new role, he watched the workers around him. They were a diverse group, some young, some old, all working tirelessly to keep the supply chain moving. He noticed how they communicated, their camaraderie evident despite the demanding environment. It was a stark contrast to the polished offices upstairs, but there was something admirable about their teamwork. One worker, a middle-aged man named Tom, approached Jerry during a break. First day down here? Tom asked, his voice friendly. Yeah, Jerry replied. I usually work in the lobby. Tom chuckled. Welcome to the real world, then. No suits and ties here. Just a lot of hard work and sweat. Jerry managed a weak smile. Yeah, it's different. Tom took a sip from his coffee thermos and leaned against a stack of pallets. You know, everyone here has a story. Some of these folks work too, even 3 jobs just to make ends meet. Kind of humbles you when you think about it. Jerry nodded, Tom's words hitting him harder than expected. He had always taken his job for granted, seeing it as just a paycheck. But here, surrounded by people who worked harder for less, he began to see things differently. Upstairs, Alex was deep into his meeting with the department heads. The topic on the table was company culture, an issue Alex was more passionate about than ever after his encounter with Jerry. We need to talk about how we treat people, Alex began, addressing the room. Not just our clients, but each other. From the boardroom to the loading dock, everyone who works here deserves respect. One of the department heads, a woman named Rachel, raised her hand. Are you referring to any specific incidents? Alex gave a small smile. Let's just say I had a first-hand experience this morning that highlighted some areas for improvement. The room murmured, a mix of curiosity and concern. Alex continued, I want to implement a new initiative, a mandatory training program for all employees, focusing on empathy, diversity, and communication. We're a team, and if one part of the team fails, we all fail. The department heads nodded in agreement, though Alex could see some hesitation in their faces. Change was never easy, especially when it involved altering entrenched behaviors. But Alex was determined to make it happen. Back in the loading dock, Jerry was beginning to settle into his temporary role. He found himself working closely with the delivery drivers, learning about their challenges and the nuances of their work. It wasn't glamorous, but it was eye-opening. One delivery driver, a young woman named Erica, caught his attention. She had a quick smile and an upbeat attitude, even as she unloaded heavy boxes from her truck. Jerry couldn't help but wonder how she managed to stay so positive in such a grueling job. "Hey," Jerry said during a lull in the activity, "how do you keep going? Doesn't this job wear you down?" Erica shrugged, wiping sweat from her brow. "Sure, it's tough, but I focus on the good stuff. The people I meet, the sense of accomplishment when a job's done right. And hey, at least I'm working." Her words struck a chord with Jerry. He realized how much he had taken for granted in his own life. "Maybe I've been looking at things all wrong," he thought. As the day wound down, Jerry found himself reflecting on everything he had experienced. The people in the loading dock, with their resilience and work ethic, had opened his eyes to a world he had ignored for too long. For the first time in years, he felt a genuine desire to change, not just for his job, but for himself. But just as he began to feel a sense of hope, a voice crackled over the intercom, summoning him back to the lobby. Jerry frowned, his stomach twisting with unease. What now? He made his way upstairs, dreading what might be waiting for him. When he reached the lobby, he saw Alex standing by the glass doors, deep in conversation with Susan and another man Jerry didn't recognize. As Jerry approached, Alex turned, his expression unreadable. "Jerry," Alex said, his tone calm but firm. "We need to talk." Jerry's stomach churned as Alex addressed him. The lobby felt colder, the polished floors stretching endlessly under the glare of the lights. Susan stood nearby, her arms crossed, her expression unreadable. The man next to her, a wiry figure in a tailored suit, eyed Jerry curiously, like he was assessing every inch of him. "Follow me," Alex said simply, gesturing toward the doors. Jerry hesitated. "Where are we going?" Alex didn't answer. He turned and walked toward the building's entrance, leaving Jerry with no choice but to follow. Susan and the suited man trailed behind, their footsteps echoing softly in the quiet lobby. As they exited the building, Jerry noticed a black SUV waiting at the curb. A driver stepped out and opened the door. Jerry hesitated again, his heart pounding. What's going on? Am I being fired? Is this some kind of legal thing? His mind raced with worst-case scenarios. "Get in," Alex said, his tone leaving no room for argument. Jerry climbed into the SUV, followed by Alex and the others. The door shut with a soft thud, and the vehicle pulled away from the curb. Jerry sat stiffly, his hands clasped in his lap, trying to decipher the tension in the air. After several minutes of silence, Alex finally spoke. "Do you know why you're here, Jerry?" Jerry shook his head. "No, sir." Alex sighed, leaning forward slightly. "Today was supposed to be a simple observational day for me. I dress down, I walk around, I see how people are treated. I don't announce myself. It's a chance to see the truth behind the polished image." Jerry nodded slowly, unsure where this was leading. "But," Alex continued, his voice harder now, "what I experienced this morning wasn't just an issue of poor treatment. It was a reflection of a deeper problem, one that I believe you need to see for yourself." Jerry frowned. "See what?" Alex gestured toward the window as the SUV slowed to a stop. "This." Jerry turned to look, and his breath caught. They had arrived at a bustling community center, its exterior weathered but well-maintained. Dozens of people milled about, some unloading supplies, others helping families into the building. The atmosphere was a mix of chaos and determination. "This," Alex said, his voice quieter now, "is where I started." Jerry blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" Alex gestured for him to follow as they exited the SUV. The group walked toward the entrance of the center, where a faded sign read Carter Community Outreach Center. Inside, the air buzzed with activity. Volunteers sorted donated clothes, prepared meals, and handed out supplies to those in need. "This is the first place I worked when I was starting Carter Enterprises," Alex explained. "Not as a businessman, but as a volunteer. I was fresh out of college, broke, and unsure of what I wanted to do. But I knew I wanted to make a difference." Jerry looked around, taking in the scene. He saw children laughing as they received warm meals, elderly individuals smiling as volunteers helped them carry bags of groceries, and people of all walks of life coming together for a common purpose. Alex continued, his tone firm but not unkind. I built this company with the idea that everyone deserves respect, no matter where they come from or what their circumstances are. That's why it was so disappointing to see how you treated someone you thought was beneath you." Jerry's face burned with shame. I didn't think. "That's the problem, Jerry," Alex said, cutting him off. "You didn't think. You assumed. And that assumption says more about you than it does about anyone else." As Alex walked Jerry through the center, he introduced him to several volunteers and staff members. One was a man named Luis, who had once been homeless but now ran the center's job placement program. Another was a woman named Carla, who had started as a volunteer while working 3 part-time jobs to support her family. Jerry listened to their stories, each one more humbling than the last. He began to see the humanity in the people he had so often overlooked or dismissed. For the first time, he understood the impact of his actions or inaction. By the time they returned to the SUV, Jerry was quiet, his mind a whirlwind of thoughts. Alex didn't say much during the drive back to the office, letting the weight of the experience settle in. Back at the building, Jerry returned to his post at the loading dock. But this time, he saw his surroundings differently. The delivery drivers who came and went, the workers who unloaded trucks, the janitorial staff cleaning up spills, they all had stories, struggles, and dreams. Late in the afternoon, Erica, the delivery driver he had spoken to earlier, approached him with a clipboard. "Hey, Jerry," she said, her tone light. "Mind signing off on this?" Jerry nodded and took the clipboard, but before handing it back, he hesitated. "Erica, can I ask you something?" "Sure," she said, raising an eyebrow. "What keeps you going? I mean, really going?" Erica smiled, her eyes softening. "Gratitude. I know where I've been, and I know where I want to go. Every step forward, no matter how small, is worth it." Her words lingered with Jerry long after she left. Gratitude. It was a concept he had never given much thought to, but now it felt like a lifeline, a way to pull himself out of the pit he had dug. That evening, as Jerry clocked out and left the building, he noticed Alex standing near the entrance, talking with Susan. Their conversation paused as Jerry approached, and Alex turned to him. "Good work today," Alex said simply. Jerry nodded, his voice steady. "Thank you, sir. And thanks for everything else. I won't forget it." Alex gave a small nod, his expression unreadable. "We'll see." As Jerry walked away, he felt a sense of determination he hadn't felt in years. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew one thing for certain. He was going to make it count. The next morning, Jerry arrived at work early. The sun hadn't fully risen, and the lobby was quiet except for the hum of the air conditioning. He stood at his usual post, but everything felt different. The words Alex had spoken the day before still echoed in his mind. Everyone deserves respect, no matter where they come from. As the hours passed, employees began trickling into the building. Jerry greeted each one with a genuine smile, even the ones who usually ignored him. He didn't expect an immediate change in how they treated him, but he knew he could control how he treated others. Around mid-morning, Erica, the delivery driver, returned with another shipment. This time, instead of brushing her off or treating her like a nuisance, Jerry walked over to help her unload the packages. "Need a hand?" he asked, his tone warm. Erica looked surprised but nodded. "Sure, thanks." As they worked side by side, Jerry asked her more about her job, her family, and her dreams. She shared that she was saving up to open her own food truck someday. "I've been cooking since I was a kid," she said, her eyes lighting up. "It's my passion." Jerry listened intently, realizing how much he had missed by not taking the time to connect with others. When they finished unloading the truck, he handed her the signed clipboard and said, "I think you'll make a great business owner." Erica smiled, a flicker of surprise in her expression. "Thanks, Jerry. That means a lot." As she drove away, Jerry felt a strange sense of fulfillment. For the first time in a long time, he felt like he was making a difference, even in small ways. Upstairs, Alex sat in a meeting with the department heads, discussing the rollout of the new empathy and respect training program. The initiative had been met with mixed reactions. Some employees were enthusiastic, while others grumbled about the added responsibility. "I know change is hard," Alex said, addressing the group. "But this isn't just about improving our company culture. It's about setting an example. If we can't treat each other with respect, how can we expect our clients to trust us? Rachel, the head of human resources, nodded. I think it's a great idea, but we'll need to ensure the training is engaging and meaningful. Otherwise, people will just go through the motions. Agreed, Alex said. Let's focus on real stories, situations people can relate to. I want this to resonate on a personal level. As the meeting continued, Alex's thoughts drifted to Jerry. He had seen glimpses of potential in the guard, but he wasn't sure if Jerry would truly embrace the opportunity for change. Time will tell, he thought. Later that day, Jerry found himself facing an unexpected challenge. A heated argument broke out between two delivery drivers in the loading dock. Voices were raised, tempers flared, and the tension was palpable. Jerry stepped forward, his heart pounding. In the past, he might have ignored the conflict or barked orders to assert control. But now, he took a different approach. Hey, he said, raising his hands. What's going on here? One of the drivers, a young man named Derek, turned to Jerry, his face red with frustration. He cut me off in the queue and then tried to blame me for being late. The other driver, an older man named Luis, shot back, I didn't cut you off. You were parked in the wrong spot. Jerry held up a hand to silence them. All right, let's take a breath. Derek, Luis, I get that you're both frustrated, but yelling at each other isn't going to solve anything. Let's figure this out calmly. The drivers hesitated, their anger cooling slightly under Jerry's steady tone. Jerry continued, Derek, if you felt disrespected, I get it. But let's focus on the real issue, making sure the deliveries get where they need to go. Luis, if there was a mix-up, let's talk it out and make sure it doesn't happen again. Sound fair? Both men nodded reluctantly. Jerry helped them sort out the scheduling issue, and by the time they left, the tension had eased. Derek even gave Luis a small nod of apology before driving off. As Jerry returned to his post, he felt a sense of pride. It wasn't a big moment, but it was progress. Maybe I'm not so bad at this after all, he thought. Upstairs, Alex watched the scene unfold on the security camera feed. He had been reviewing footage from the loading dock when the argument broke out. Seeing Jerry step in and handle the situation with empathy and patience brought a small smile to Alex's face. Maybe there's hope for him yet, he murmured to himself. As the day wound down, Jerry was called to Alex's office. He felt a mix of nerves and anticipation as he stepped into the sleek space. Alex was seated at his desk, a thoughtful expression on his face. Jerry, Alex said, gesturing for him to sit. I've been keeping an eye on you today. Jerry's stomach dropped. Am I in trouble? Alex chuckled. No, quite the opposite. I saw how you handled that situation in the loading dock. You showed patience, empathy, and leadership. That's exactly the kind of behavior I want to see in my employees. Jerry felt a swell of pride, but kept his expression humble. Thank you, sir. I'm just trying to do better. Alex leaned forward, his tone serious. And you are. But remember, this is just the beginning. Changing the way you see and treat people is a lifelong journey. It's not about perfection. It's about progress. Jerry nodded. I understand. Alex stood and extended a hand. Keep it up, Jerry. You've got potential. Don't waste it. Jerry shook Alex's hand, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. As he left the office, he knew he still had a long way to go, but for the first time in years, he felt like he was on the right path. But just as Jerry stepped into the lobby, a commotion at the front doors caught his attention. A group of well-dressed individuals had arrived, their presence commanding attention. At the center of the group was a woman with a sharp, no-nonsense expression. She looked around the lobby, her gaze settling on Jerry. You, she said, her voice cutting through the noise. Are you the head of security here? Jerry froze, unsure of what was happening. Yes. Can I help you? Her eyes narrowed. Oh, you're going to need to explain a lot. Let's start with why I've been getting complaints about this building's security practices. Jerry's heart sank as the lobby fell silent. All eyes were on him, and he knew this was far from over. The woman's sharp gaze pinned Jerry in place, and the quiet hum of the lobby seemed to vanish under the weight of her words. She stood with an air of authority, flanked by several equally serious-looking individuals. Jerry glanced nervously toward the reception desk, hoping for support, but no one dared to interrupt. "I'm Olivia Brooks," she said, her voice firm, "head of corporate compliance and risk management for Carter Enterprises. And right now, you're the person I need answers from." Jerry swallowed hard, trying to steady his voice. I'm not sure what this is about, ma'am." Olivia raised an eyebrow. "Oh, I think you do. Complaints about your conduct. Incidents involving poor treatment of delivery drivers, guests, and even employees. You've been on my radar for weeks." The words hit Jerry like a sledgehammer. Weeks? He had assumed the incident with Alex was an isolated event, but this was bigger than he'd realized. Jerry started, but Olivia cut him off. "Save it," she snapped. "You'll have your chance to explain. For now, I want a full report of today's activities, including the incident in the loading dock." Jerry blinked. "Loading dock?" "Yes," Olivia said, her tone icy. "Word travels fast around here. I heard there was an argument this morning, and you stepped in to handle it. I want details. Every decision you made, every word you said." Jerry felt the weight of her scrutiny, but he forced himself to stand tall. He knew this was his chance to show that he was trying to change. "Of course, ma'am," he said. "I'll provide a full report." Olivia nodded curtly. "Good. And don't waste my time with excuses." She turned to the group behind her. "Let's go. We have a lot to review." With that, she swept toward the elevators, leaving Jerry standing in the middle of the lobby, his thoughts swirling. As the day wore on, Jerry couldn't shake the tension from his encounter with Olivia. He worked quietly at his post, replaying the interaction in his mind. Weeks of complaints. How did I not see this coming? Around lunchtime, Erica showed up with another delivery. She noticed Jerry's somber expression as he signed off on her paperwork. "You okay?" she asked. Jerry hesitated, then sighed. "Honestly? No. It's been a rough day." Erica tilted her head. "Want to talk about it?" Jerry hesitated again, but something about her genuine concern made him open up. He told her about Olivia, the complaints, and the mounting pressure he felt to prove himself. Erica listened quietly, then said, "Sounds like you're carrying a lot. But you know what? Owning up to your mistakes is the first step. Not everyone gets that chance." Jerry looked at her, surprised. "You think so?" "I know so," she said firmly. "I've made my share of mistakes, too. But what matters is what you do next." Her words settled over Jerry like a calming breeze. For the first time that day, he felt a small flicker of hope. Upstairs, Olivia was poring over files in the executive conference room. Alex joined her, his expression calm but curious. "Olivia," he said, taking a seat across from her, "what's your assessment so far?" She leaned back in her chair, tapping a pen against the table. "It's a mixed bag. On one hand, Jerry's record is worse than I expected. Multiple complaints, minor incidents, and a general lack of professionalism. But on the other hand, I've seen signs of improvement. That situation in the loading dock this morning? He handled it well." Alex nodded thoughtfully. "Do you think he's worth keeping?" Olivia shrugged. "That depends on whether he's truly committed to change. Actions speak louder than words." Alex smiled faintly. "That's what I told him." Late in the afternoon, Jerry was summoned to the conference room. The walk there felt like a death march, each step heavier than the last. When he arrived, Olivia and Alex were waiting, their expressions unreadable. "Have a seat," Olivia said, gesturing to a chair at the end of the table. Jerry sat, his back straight, his hands folded tightly in his lap. He felt like a student called to the principal's office, but he refused to let his nerves show. "Jerry," Olivia began, her tone sharp, "I've reviewed your file and spoken to several employees. The picture that emerges is complicated." Jerry braced himself. "You have a history of poor behavior," she continued, "but I've also seen evidence that you're trying to turn things around. The question is, are you serious about making a lasting change? Or is this just temporary?" Jerry looked her in the eye. "I'm serious, ma'am. I know I've made mistakes, but I want to do better. I will do better." Olivia studied him for a moment, then glanced at Alex. He gave her a small nod, and she turned back to Jerry. "Here's the deal," she said. You'll remain on probation for the next 60 days. During that time, you'll undergo mandatory training sessions and performance reviews. You'll also be paired with a mentor to guide you. If you show significant improvement, we'll re-evaluate your position. If not, she let the words hang in the air. Jerry nodded quickly. Understood. Olivia stood, signaling the end of the meeting. Don't make me regret this. As Jerry left the room, Alex called after him. Jerry. He turned, meeting Alex's steady gaze. Remember, Alex said, his voice calm but firm. This is your chance to prove yourself. Don't waste it. Jerry nodded, the weight of their words settling heavily on his shoulders. As he walked back to his post, he felt a strange mix of relief and determination. He knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time, he felt like he had a real shot at redemption. But just as Jerry reached the lobby, a call came over the radio. There was a disturbance in the parking lot, a confrontation involving a delivery driver and a disgruntled former employee. Jerry's heart sank as he grabbed his radio and rushed toward the scene. When he arrived, the sight that greeted him stopped him cold. Erica, standing defensively by her truck, facing off against an angry man yelling and pointing at her. Stay away from my stuff, the man shouted, his voice echoing across the lot. Jerry's stomach twisted. He knew this wasn't going to end easily, and how he handled it could make or break everything. Jerry sprinted across the parking lot, his heart pounding as the confrontation escalated. The man, a wiry figure with a face twisted in anger, stood a few feet from Erica, shouting and gesturing wildly. Erica's hands were raised, her posture cautious but resolute. I told you to leave it alone, the man yelled, pointing at a stack of boxes near the truck. I didn't touch your stuff, Erica replied, her voice calm but firm. I'm just here to deliver this shipment. Jerry slowed as he approached, taking in the scene. The man's aggression was palpable, and a small crowd of onlookers had gathered at the edges of the lot. Jerry quickly assessed the situation. If he didn't act soon, things could spiral out of control. Sir, Jerry called out, his voice steady. What seems to be the problem? The man whipped around, glaring at Jerry. Who the hell are you? I'm the head of security here, Jerry said, keeping his tone calm. I'm here to make sure everything stays under control. The man scoffed, his eyes darting between Jerry and Erica. Under control? She's messing with my stuff. She doesn't belong here. Jerry took a slow step closer, his hands open and non-threatening. What's your name, sir? Trevor. The man snapped. Okay, Trevor, Jerry said evenly. Let's talk about this. Can you tell me what's going on? Trevor hesitated, some of the anger in his posture shifting to frustration. I used to work here, all right? That truck's parked where my stuff used to be stored. I came back to grab a few things, and she's acting like I'm the one causing trouble. Erica interjected, her voice firm but not confrontational. I'm just doing my job, Trevor. If you had things stored here, that's something you need to sort out with the company. Trevor glared at her, but Jerry stepped in before the situation could reignite. Trevor, I understand you're upset, Jerry said, but let's take a step back. First, are you saying you left personal items here after you left the company? Trevor hesitated, then nodded. Yeah, I didn't have a chance to pick them up before they cleared out my space. Jerry nodded. I see. That's frustrating. I get it. But causing a scene out here isn't going to solve the problem. How about this? Let me talk to the building manager and see if we can locate your belongings. In the meantime, I need you to give Erica some space so she can finish her delivery. Trevor's shoulders sagged slightly, the fight in him draining. Fine, he muttered. But this better not take long. It won't, Jerry assured him. Just hang tight and I'll sort this out. Trevor stepped back, muttering under his breath, and Jerry turned to Erica. You good? He asked. She nodded, her face a mixture of relief and appreciation. Yeah, thanks. That could have gotten ugly. Jerry gave her a small smile. Just doing my job. After ensuring that Erica could finish her delivery without further interruptions, Jerry escorted Trevor inside and contacted the building manager. They located Trevor's belongings in a storage room, neatly boxed and labeled. When Jerry brought the boxes to him, Trevor seemed surprised. Didn't think you'd actually follow through, Trevor admitted, his tone grudgingly respectful. Jerry handed him the boxes. "We're all just trying to do our jobs, Trevor. No hard feelings." Trevor gave a small nod, his expression softening. "Thanks. I shouldn't have lost my temper out there." "It happens," Jerry said. "Just try to keep it cool next time." As the day wound down, Jerry found himself reflecting on the incident. It wasn't just about resolving a conflict. It was about showing empathy and finding solutions. He realized how much his perspective had shifted in just a few days. The old Jerry might have barked orders and escalated the situation. The new Jerry sought to de-escalate, to understand. Later, as he returned to the lobby, Alex was waiting for him. His expression was calm, but his eyes held a glimmer of approval. "I heard about the parking lot," Alex said. Jerry tensed. "Did I mess up?" Alex's lips curved into a small smile. "Quite the opposite. You handled it well." Jerry felt a wave of relief. "Thank you, sir." Alex stepped closer, his tone thoughtful. "This is what I've been looking for, Jerry. Not perfection, but progress. Keep it up." Jerry nodded, his determination solidifying. He didn't know where this journey would lead, but for the first time, he felt like he was on the right track. Just as Jerry was about to clock out, a call came over the radio. A high-ranking executive was arriving for an unscheduled visit. Jerry's stomach tightened. He had heard stories about this executive, a no-nonsense leader who had little tolerance for mistakes. As the black car pulled up to the building, Jerry straightened his posture and braced himself. The car door opened, and out stepped a tall, imposing figure dressed in a sharp suit. The man's gaze swept the lobby, landing on Jerry. "Are you the head of security?" Jerry nodded. "Yes, sir. How can I assist you?" The man stepped closer, his expression unreadable. "I've heard a lot about you lately." Jerry's pulse quickened as he prepared for whatever came next. Jerry's heart pounded as the executive's sharp eyes seemed to evaluate him from head to toe. The man's presence was imposing. Everything from his tailored suit to the confident way he carried himself exuded authority. "I'm Michael Thompson," the man said, his voice firm but not unkind. "Executive Vice President of Operations. And I've been hearing a lot of chatter about a certain security guard who's been under some scrutiny." Jerry swallowed hard, keeping his posture straight. "Yes, sir. That would be me." Michael raised an eyebrow, his expression giving nothing away. "Follow me. We're going to take a walk." Jerry hesitated for only a moment before stepping around his desk to join Michael. As they walked through the lobby, Michael spoke in a calm, measured tone. "When I hear about someone who's been causing problems, I make it my business to get the full story. Some of what I've heard about you isn't exactly glowing, but I've also heard about how you've been stepping up recently." Jerry wasn't sure how to respond. "I've been trying to make things right," he said finally, his voice steady. Michael glanced at him. "Trying is good. Results are better." They passed through the glass doors into the parking lot, where the remnants of the earlier commotion lingered. A few delivery drivers chatted near their trucks, and the staff working the loading dock were winding down for the day. Michael stopped and turned to Jerry. "Tell me about what happened here today," Michael said, folding his arms. "From your perspective." Jerry took a deep breath and recounted the incident with Trevor and Erica, sparing no details. He explained how he had de-escalated the conflict, located Trevor's belongings, and ensured everyone left on good terms. As he spoke, Michael watched him closely, his expression unreadable. When Jerry finished, Michael was silent for a moment. Then he said, "And how did you feel about how you handled it?" Jerry hesitated. "Honestly, I think I did okay. I kept things calm, resolved the issue, and made sure everyone felt respected. But I know I've got a lot to learn." Michael nodded slowly. "That's a fair assessment. I'll tell you this, Jerry. You handled today better than some people in your position might have. But the real question is whether you can sustain this. One good day doesn't erase a history of poor behavior." Jerry met Michael's gaze, a spark of determination in his eyes. "I understand that, sir. I'm not just trying to have a good day. I'm trying to be better every day." Michael's lips twitched into what could have been a smile. "We'll see." As they returned to the building, Michael stopped by the reception desk, where Susan was organizing paperwork. She looked up, surprised to see them. "Susan," Michael said, his tone brisk. How's Jerry doing in your opinion? Susan glanced at Jerry, then back at Michael. He's making progress, she said carefully. The Jerry I saw a week ago and the Jerry I saw today are very different people. Michael nodded. That's consistent with what I've observed. Let's hope it sticks. Jerry felt a flicker of hope at Susan's words. Maybe I'm starting to turn things around, he thought. Later that evening, Jerry was finally heading home when he spotted Erica in the parking lot, loading her truck. She waved him over, and he walked up, curious. Hey, she said, smiling. Thanks again for earlier. You handled that Trevor guy really well. Jerry shrugged, feeling a little awkward. Just doing my job. Maybe, Erica said, leaning against her truck. But you did more than that. You showed respect. That's not something everyone does. Jerry looked at her, surprised. You think so? I know so, she said. People notice that kind of thing, Jerry. It makes a difference. Her words stayed with him as he drove home. For the first time in a long time, he felt like he was on the right path, not just for his job, but for himself. The next morning, Jerry arrived early again, determined to keep the momentum going. As he was settling into his post, Olivia Brooks approached him, her expression unreadable. Jerry, she said, handing him a sealed envelope. This is from Mr. Carter. Jerry's stomach twisted as he took the envelope. Is this bad news? Olivia tilted her head. Open it and find out. Jerry's hands trembled slightly as he tore open the envelope. Inside was a typed note from Alex Carter. Jerry, I've been watching your progress, and I'm cautiously optimistic about the direction you're heading. However, as I've said before, actions speak louder than words. Enclosed, you'll find details about a new assignment. Consider this your opportunity to demonstrate your commitment to growth. Don't disappoint me. Alex Carter. Jerry unfolded the second page of the letter and read the details. His eyes widened as he realized what was being asked of him. It wasn't just about his current role. It was about stepping into a leadership position for a company-wide security team overhaul. They're giving me this much responsibility? Jerry muttered, half to himself. Olivia smirked. Think of it as a test. Sink or swim. Jerry nodded, the weight of the challenge sinking in. This is it, he thought. My chance to prove I've really changed. But just as he was about to ask Olivia for clarification, a frantic call came over the radio. Code red in the West Wing. Possible intruder. Jerry's heart leapt as he grabbed his radio and ran toward the West Wing, adrenaline pumping. He didn't know what he was walking into, but he knew one thing for sure. This was going to be a defining moment. Jerry sprinted toward the West Wing, his heart pounding with adrenaline. The radio crackled again. Suspected intruder near the conference rooms. Proceed with caution. The normally quiet halls were buzzing with nervous energy as employees peeked out of their offices, their faces filled with concern. When Jerry reached the West Wing, he slowed his pace, his eyes scanning for anything out of the ordinary. The corridor was eerily silent except for the faint hum of the air conditioning. As he approached the conference rooms, he spotted movement, a shadow slipping past one of the doors. Jerry clicked his radio. I've got eyes on the suspect. Heading into conference room 4 to investigate. Carefully, he pushed the door open, stepping inside with measured movements. The room was dimly lit, the blinds drawn, and at first glance, it appeared empty. But then he noticed a figure crouched near the far wall, rifling through a filing cabinet. Hey, Jerry barked, his voice firm. Step away from the cabinet and put your hands where I can see them. The figure froze, then slowly turned toward Jerry. It was a man in his late 30s, his face pale and his hands trembling. He looked more terrified than threatening. I'm not here to hurt anyone, the man said quickly, raising his hands. I swear. I need something from here. Jerry kept his stance firm, but lowered his voice slightly. Who are you, and what are you doing in this building? The man hesitated, his eyes darting around the room. Finally, he said, My name's Greg. I used to work here. I was let go last month, but I left something important behind, and I couldn't get anyone to help me retrieve it. What's so important that you'd break in to get it? Jerry asked, keeping his tone calm but authoritative. Greg swallowed hard. It's a prototype design I was working on. I put everything I had into it, and it got lost when they cleaned out my office. Without it, I don't have a chance of finding a new job. Jerry studied the man for a moment, his breathing still quick from the chase. He could see the desperation in Greg's eyes, the way his hands shook with fear. He realized this wasn't just a case of theft or malice. This was someone who felt like he had no other options. "All right, Greg," Jerry said, lowering his stance slightly. "Let's talk this out. First, step away from the cabinet. I'll help you figure this out, but you need to trust me." Greg hesitated, but eventually stepped away, his hands still raised. Jerry clicked his radio. "Situation under control. Stand by for details." He gestured for Greg to sit at the conference table. "Now," Jerry said, pulling out a chair for himself, "let's figure this out. Tell me about this prototype." Greg slumped into the chair, his shoulders sagging. It was a concept I'd been working on for months, a new way to streamline production for the company. But after I was let go, I couldn't get anyone to return my calls. I just wanted to get my work back so I could prove my worth somewhere else. Jerry nodded slowly. "I get it, Greg, but breaking in wasn't the way to go. Now, you've put yourself in an even worse position." Greg buried his face in his hands. "I know. I didn't know what else to do." Jerry leaned forward. "Listen, I can't promise you anything, but I can help you get in touch with the right people. If that prototype is as important as you say, we'll find it. But you have to do this the right way." Greg looked up, his eyes filled with a mixture of hope and fear. "You do that? After all this?" Jerry nodded. "Everyone makes mistakes. What matters is what you do to fix them." A few minutes later, Jerry escorted Greg to the security office, where Olivia Brooks was waiting. She raised an eyebrow as they entered. "This the intruder?" "Yes," Jerry said, his tone calm. "But he's not dangerous. His name's Greg, and he's a former employee. He came back for something he left behind." Olivia's sharp eyes turned to Greg. "Is that true?" Greg nodded quickly. "Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry for how I went about it. I wasn't thinking clearly." Olivia sighed, her expression softening slightly. "Breaking in isn't acceptable, but I'll look into your claim about the prototype. If it's here, we'll find it." Greg exhaled, relief washing over his face. "Thank you." Olivia turned to Jerry. "Good work de-escalating this. Could have gone a lot worse." Jerry nodded, feeling a sense of pride. "Just doing my job." Later that day, Alex called Jerry to his office. When Jerry entered, Alex was seated at his desk, reviewing a report. "Jerry," Alex said, looking up with a faint smile, "I heard about the incident in the West Wing. Olivia was impressed with how you handled it." Jerry rubbed the back of his neck, feeling both proud and humbled. "Thank you, sir." Alex leaned forward, his expression serious. "This is exactly what I've been looking for. You didn't just follow protocol, you showed empathy and leadership. Keep this up, and I see a bright future for you here." Jerry felt a swell of gratitude. "I'll do my best, sir." As he left the office, Jerry couldn't help but feel that, for the first time in his life, he was on the path to becoming someone he could truly be proud of. But as the day drew to a close, a new problem emerged. Olivia stormed into the lobby, her face tight with frustration. "Jerry," she said, her voice clipped. "We've got a situation. The prototype Greg mentioned? It's missing." Jerry's stomach sank. "Missing? How?" "That's what we need to find out," Olivia said. "And fast." The weight of Olivia's words hit Jerry like a ton of bricks. The prototype was missing, and now, the situation had gone from a tense misunderstanding to a potential disaster. "How can it be missing?" Jerry asked, his voice steady despite the turmoil brewing inside him. Olivia crossed her arms, her sharp eyes scanning the lobby as if the culprit might still be lingering nearby. "That's what I'm trying to figure out. The storage logs show it was moved out of its assigned location last week. No record of where it went after that." Jerry's mind raced. If this gets out, it could damage the company's reputation. Or worse, someone could use that prototype against us. He took a deep breath, grounding himself. "What's the plan?" "You're leading the investigation," Olivia said without hesitation. "You've earned a second chance here, Jerry." And this is your moment to prove you can handle real responsibility. Can you do this? Jerry nodded, a spark of determination in his chest. I'll find it. Good, Olivia said, handing him a folder. Here's everything we have so far: logs, names of employees who had access, and recent security footage. Start there. Jerry flipped through the folder, skimming the details. The prototype, labeled Streamliner X12, had been moved from the storage room last Tuesday. The last person to sign it out was a technician named Paul Johnson, who worked in product development. I'll start with Paul, Jerry said, closing the folder. Anything else I need to know? Olivia hesitated, her expression hardening. Yes. If this doesn't get resolved quickly, it's on you. No pressure. Jerry smirked faintly, masking his nerves. Got it. Paul Johnson was in his office when Jerry arrived, hunched over a desk cluttered with papers and blueprints. He looked up, startled, as Jerry knocked on the doorframe. Paul Johnson? Jerry asked. That's me, Paul replied cautiously. What's this about? Jerry stepped inside, holding the folder. I'm investigating the disappearance of the Streamliner X12 prototype. You were the last person to sign it out. Can you tell me what happened to it? Paul's face paled. The X12? I didn't know it was missing. According to the logs, you signed it out last Tuesday, Jerry said, watching Paul closely. What happened after that? Paul rubbed the back of his neck, his brow furrowed. I signed it out to run a test in the lab. After the test, I returned it to the storage room. At least I thought I did. You thought? Jerry pressed. What does that mean? Paul frowned. It means I dropped it off near the storage area, but I didn't personally lock it up. I handed it to one of the assistants, Claire something. She said she'd handle it. Jerry scribbled down the name. Claire who? Claire Evans, Paul said. She's a temp. Just started a few weeks ago. All right, Jerry said, standing. If you think of anything else, let me know. Tracking down Claire Evans proved more difficult than Jerry anticipated. Her schedule was irregular, and her temporary status meant she wasn't always in the building. He finally found her in the cafeteria, eating a late lunch alone. Claire Evans? Jerry asked, approaching her table. She looked up, startled. Yes? I'm Jerry, head of security, he said, sitting across from her. I need to ask you about the Streamliner X12 prototype. Claire's eyes widened. Oh, is something wrong? It's missing, Jerry said bluntly. Paul Johnson says he handed it to you last Tuesday to return to storage. Did you? Claire bit her lip, clearly nervous. I did sort of. What does sort of mean? Jerry asked, leaning forward. Well, I was on my way to the storage room when I got a call to help in the lab, Claire explained. I left the prototype on a cart near the storage area, thinking I'd come back for it. But when I went back, it was gone. Jerry's stomach sank. You left it unattended? I didn't think anyone would touch it, Claire said defensively. That area's restricted, Jerry sighed, running a hand through his hair. Did you see anyone in the area when you left the cart? Claire shook her head. No, but there were a few people coming in and out of the hallway. I didn't pay much attention. All right, Jerry said, standing. I'll need you to write a statement about this. And Claire, next time, don't leave sensitive materials unattended. I'm sorry, she said quietly. I didn't mean for this to happen. Jerry spent the next several hours reviewing security footage from the storage area. The video showed Claire wheeling the cart toward the storage room and leaving it in the hallway. About 10 minutes later, another figure appeared, Trevor. Jerry's eyes narrowed as he watched Trevor glance around, spot the cart, and approach it. The footage cut off before Jerry could see what happened next. Trevor, Jerry muttered. I thought we handled this. He radioed Olivia, updating her on the situation. It looks like Trevor may have taken the prototype, he said. I need to find him. Do it quickly, Olivia said. This is getting out of hand. Jerry tracked Trevor to a small apartment on the outskirts of town. When he knocked on the door, there was a long pause before Trevor opened it, his face wary. Jerry, Trevor said. What are you doing here? I think you know, Jerry said, his tone firm. The prototype. Where is it? Trevor's face turned red. I didn't take it. Security footage says otherwise, Jerry countered. I saw you near the cart where it was left. If you have it, Now's the time to come clean. Trevor hesitated, his jaw tightening. I didn't steal it. I was curious, okay? I saw it sitting there and took a look, but I left it right where I found it. Jerry studied him carefully. Trevor's nervousness seemed genuine, but something about his story didn't sit right. If you didn't take it, who did? Jerry asked. Trevor shook his head. I don't know, but I swear, I didn't touch it after that. Jerry stepped back, his mind racing. If Trevor's telling the truth, then someone else must have taken it after he left. As Jerry returned to the office, Olivia met him in the lobby. Well, she asked. Trevor says he didn't take it, Jerry said. He admits to looking at it, but he claims he left it where it was. And you believe him? Olivia asked, skeptical. I think he's telling the truth, Jerry said. But if he didn't take it, that means someone else did. Someone we haven't accounted for yet. Olivia frowned. Then we're back to square one. Jerry nodded, the weight of the situation pressing heavily on him. Not quite. We have a window of time between when Trevor saw the prototype and when it disappeared. If we narrow that down, we'll find our thief. Olivia's expression softened slightly. All right, Jerry. You've got one more shot to figure this out. Don't waste it. Jerry spent the rest of the night reviewing every piece of information he had. The security footage, the employee logs, the testimonies from Paul and Claire. It all pointed to a critical time window of just under 30 minutes. But the question remained, who else had access to the area during that time? He returned to the footage, scrutinizing every frame. Just after Trevor left the cart, another figure appeared. A maintenance worker pushing a janitorial cart. The worker paused briefly near the prototype before continuing down the hall. Jerry froze the footage and zoomed in on the worker's badge. It was too blurry to make out a name, but the uniform and badge were distinct. Gotcha, Jerry muttered. The next morning, Jerry met with Olivia in her office. I think I've got a lead, he said, handing her a printout of the still frame. Olivia examined it, her brow furrowing. That's one of the contracted maintenance workers. They're not directly employed by us, but they have access to most areas of the building. Exactly, Jerry said. I'll need to interview their team. Do it, Olivia said. And Jerry, if you find the prototype, make sure it's handled discreetly. We don't need this blowing up. Jerry tracked down the head of the maintenance team, a man named Carl. Carl was cooperative, providing a list of employees who had worked that shift. One name stood out, Mitch Carter, a worker with a history of disciplinary issues. Mitch hasn't shown up for work in a few days, Carl admitted. He called in sick, but something felt off. Jerry's instincts flared. Do you have his address? Carl nodded and handed it over. Be careful. Mitch can be unpredictable. Jerry and Olivia arrived at Mitch's apartment later that afternoon, accompanied by local police for backup. They knocked on the door, but there was no answer. The officers gained entry, and the group stepped inside. The apartment was a mess, but it didn't take long to find what they were looking for. In the corner of the living room, partially hidden under a tarp, was the missing prototype. Jerry let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. There it is. One of the officers examined the prototype, confirming its identity. This matches the description. We'll take it into evidence. As the officers secured the prototype, Jerry noticed something else. A stack of papers on a nearby table. They appeared to be blueprints and schematics, copies of the prototype's design. Looks like he was planning to sell the designs, Olivia said, her voice low. Good thing we got here first. Back at the office, Jerry and Olivia delivered the prototype to Alex Carter. Alex's expression was a mix of relief and gratitude as he examined the device. Excellent work, Jerry, Alex said, setting the prototype on his desk. You saved us from what could have been a major disaster. Jerry felt a swell of pride. Just doing my job, sir. Alex smiled. You've been saying that a lot lately, but I think it's time we acknowledge that you're doing more than just your job. You've proven yourself, Jerry. Consider your probation officially over. Jerry's eyes widened. Really? Really, Alex said, extending a hand. You've earned it. Jerry shook Alex's hand, his chest swelling with a sense of accomplishment. For the first time in years, he felt like he was truly making a difference, not just for himself, but for the people around him. In the days that followed, Jerry's reputation around the company transformed. Employees who had once dismissed him now greeted him with respect. Erica, the delivery driver, even stopped by one day to drop off a thank you note. "You're really turning things around, Jerry," she said, her smile warm. "Keep it up." Jerry smiled back. "Thanks, Erica. I will." Weeks later, Alex called Jerry into his office. As Jerry sat down, Alex slid an envelope across the desk. "What's this?" Jerry asked, picking it up. "An offer," Alex said. "I want you to oversee the security operations for all our regional offices. It's a big step up, but I think you're ready." Jerry opened the envelope, his eyes scanning the details. The position came with more responsibilities, higher pay, and a chance to make an even bigger impact. I don't know what to say," Jerry said, his voice thick with emotion. "Say yes," Alex said with a grin. "And keep proving me right." Jerry nodded, a smile spreading across his face. "Yes, absolutely yes." As Jerry left Alex's office, he reflected on how far he'd come. From a man who once mocked a delivery driver to someone trusted with a critical leadership role, his journey had been anything but smooth. But he had learned that change was possible if you were willing to put in the work. And as he walked through the lobby, greeting employees and visitors alike, Jerry felt a profound sense of pride. He had earned his second chance, and he wasn't going to waste it.